When news leaked about an unreleased audition tape featuring Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, the entire fandom erupted with disbelief. For years, fans had speculated about their instant chemistry, but no one imagined there was hidden footage so powerful that the studio chose to bury it. According to insiders, the tape wasn't cut because of technical flaws or casting reasons. It was hidden because the connection between Jamie and Dakota felt too real. One studio executive even confessed, "We didn't want the world to see that. It would have changed everything." Those words alone were enough to send shockwaves through Hollywood. The story begins on the morning of their very first audition together, long before the world associated their names with Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele. Jamie arrived early, quiet and focused, while Dakota stepped into the room with her usual effortless calm. They had never met before. They had never exchanged a single word. But from the second their eyes met, multiple casting staff later admitted they felt something shift in the room, something electric, immediate, and strangely intimate. Audition rooms are usually stiff, mechanical spaces where actors recite lines under harsh lights and emotionless cameras. But not that day. The moment Jamie and Dakota began reading, the atmosphere transformed into something that felt alive. Their voices softened naturally toward each other, their physical distance closed without direction, and their body language synced as if they had known each other for years. "We all looked at each other like, what is happening right now?" one casting assistant recalled. It didn't feel like an audition. It felt like a reunion. The first shock came during a simple dialogue scene. The lines were basic, nothing emotional, but Jamie held Dakota's gaze far longer than the script required. She didn't look away. Instead, she leaned in slightly, unconsciously, as though drawn toward him. The room went silent. The casting director scribbled something in her notes and mouthed to her assistant, "This isn't acting." Dakota's cheeks flushed, Jamie swallowed hard, and everyone watching felt they had witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. If that had been the only moment, maybe the tape would have been considered strong but ordinary. But it didn't stop there. In another scene, Jamie instinctively reached out and touched Dakota's hand, a gesture that wasn't directed, wasn't scripted, and wasn't typical in an audition environment. Dakota froze for half a second, not because she was uncomfortable, but because the touch felt strangely familiar. "It was natural," said an insider. "Too natural, like they'd done it 1,000 times before." The studio executive reviewing the footage later wrote a confidential note describing their chemistry as dangerously authentic. That phrase was repeated enough times in internal memos that it became almost a warning. The team became concerned, not about whether they were right for the roles, but about how the public would interpret what they had just witnessed. "The tape was explosive," the executive said. "If it leaked back then, tabloids would have gone insane." Dakota herself remembered the audition vividly years later. She admitted that something about the room, the scene, and Jamie's presence felt overwhelming. She recalled feeling warm, almost nervous, a sensation she wasn't expecting during a professional tryout. "It didn't feel like we were acting," she said. "It felt like something was happening between us that we couldn't control." Her reaction was so visceral that she avoided watching the playback for months afterward. As for Jamie, he later confessed that he walked out of the room shaken in a way he couldn't explain. He felt an emotional pull toward Dakota that startled him. It wasn't romantic, and it wasn't infatuation, it was something deeper, like recognition. "I didn't know her," he said, "but I felt like I did." That feeling stayed with him long after the audition ended, haunting him as he waited to hear whether he had landed the role. Once the tape was reviewed by the highest levels of the studio, the decision was made quickly and quietly. It would be locked away. Not because it was bad, but because it was too good, too real, too revealing. It risked sparking rumors before filming even began. It risked overshadowing the entire franchise. And most of all, it risked exposing a connection that neither Jamie nor Dakota had fully processed yet. Years later, insiders still insist that if the public ever saw that audition tape, they would understand everything: the on-screen chemistry, the whispered rumors, the off-camera tension, and the emotional bond that seemed impossible to fabricate. Because that day, in that room, before fame and scripts and expectations, something undeniable happened. And the world was never meant to see it. According to the studio executive, the unreleased audition tape didn't remain hidden simply because of chemistry. It was hidden because of one specific moment no one saw coming. In the middle of a scene that was supposed to be neutral and straightforward, Jamie delivered a line with an emotional weight that wasn't in the script. Dakota's breath hitched in response, her eyes softening in a way that stunned the room. The executive said it felt like the characters had vanished, replaced by two people experiencing something intensely real. It was the kind of moment you don't interrupt, he recalled. And the kind you definitely don't release. The casting director later admitted she had never seen an audition spiral into that level of authenticity. She described watching Jamie and Dakota as two magnets drawn together by force. Even when the scene ended, their eyes remained locked for an uncomfortable heartbeat, one that made the entire room feel like accidental witnesses to something private. Dakota finally looked away first, breaking the tension with a small, nervous laugh that didn't match the expression in her eyes. Jamie stayed frozen, visibly dazed. It felt like watching a confession neither of them said aloud, the casting director said. Another moment sealed the tape's fate. During a direction reset, when cameras were still rolling but the actors thought they were off record, Jamie leaned in and whispered something to Dakota. Whatever he said made her expression soften instantly, her shoulders relaxing as she instinctively stepped closer. The interaction was tender, genuine, nothing to do with work. When the executive later reviewed the playback, he paused and rewound the frame multiple times, unable to believe how intimate it looked. He wrote one line in his internal report, "This cannot be released. They are too real." As word of the audition spread internally, several high-ranking individuals watched it privately. All of them reacted the same way, with stunned silence. One producer reportedly asked, "Are they together?" Another joked nervously, "Did they know we were filming?" But beneath the humor was a very real concern. If this tape leaked, the media wouldn't hesitate to twist the story into scandal long before filming even began. The studio was already preparing for 3 movies, and they couldn't risk chaos before production started. Dakota later admitted she had sensed that something from the audition crossed a line, though she didn't fully understand it at the time. She remembered going home that night, feeling unsettled and strangely emotional. Part of her wondered if she had overreacted, another part knew she hadn't. "I felt like I had seen a side of Jamie I wasn't supposed to see yet," she recalled. That feeling stayed with her throughout the early days of filming, coloring every interaction between them. Jamie, on the other hand, struggled even more with the moment. Years later, he confessed that the audition had affected him deeply. "I walked out of that room not thinking about the role," he said. "I was thinking about her." He described feeling vulnerable in a way he hadn't expected, like something inside him had opened without permission. The intimacy born in that room followed him into every scene afterward, making their on-screen chemistry effortless and their off-screen dynamic impossible to ignore. The studio's decision to lock the tape away wasn't just about protecting the actors. It was about controlling a narrative they feared would spiral. The executive explained that releasing the tape would have made it harder for Jamie and Dakota to work freely. Every gesture would have been analyzed, every interaction magnified, and every rumor amplified. They deserved a chance to build those roles without the world interfering, he said. But that audition made it clear they were already connected. Despite the secrecy, those who saw the tape never forgot it. They said it explained everything fans later tried to decode: the emotional closeness, the deep trust, the palpable tension. It wasn't invented during filming. It wasn't forced by direction. It existed from the moment they met. And though the tape remains locked in studio archives, those who witnessed it insist that if it ever surfaced, fans would finally understand why Jamie and Dakota's chemistry felt almost supernatural. In the end, the studio executive summarized the entire situation with a line that echoed through the industry. That audition wasn't the beginning of a film. It was the beginning of them. And with that, the world finally understood why the tape had to remain hidden. Because what Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson shared in that room was never meant for the public. It was something real. Something rare. Something unforgettable.